Evening. Buyer's remorse. Buy a new car? I'll be moving in. Let's get started.
Sorry, I think there's been a mistake. I bought it from Carvana.
You what?
Yeah, great price. I even have 7 days to love it or return it.
So there's no...
No buyer's remorse. More like buyer's rejoice.
I guess I'll let myself out. Congratulations. I mean it.
Buyer's rejoice. Buy your car today on Carvana.
Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Finding a missing airliner on the seabed is, of course, going to be of great interest to anyone fascinated by the mystery of MH370. And today I'm going to be talking with someone who has done just that. I'm speaking with Russ Matthews, president and co-founder of the Air Sea Heritage Foundation, who organized an expedition that this past June found a Pan Am passenger plane that had lain undiscovered on the seabed near Puerto Rico for more than 70 years. He's going to tell us all about it. That's coming up right now. Hi, everybody. Jeff Wise back with you for another episode of Finding MH370, the only podcast in the world that breaks down all the evidence in aviation's greatest mystery with the help of subject matter experts from around the world. Today, we have arguably the very best kind of expert one could hope for, an expert in finding airliners on the seabed. I have to say, I really got a kick out of speaking with Russ, who's both super knowledgeable, but also smart and funny. I think you'll enjoy our conversation as much as I did. Quick heads up, after the conversation, I give a shout out to the special people who have become new sponsors of the channel. And I also review the survey that I posted with last episode. It was all about the official explanation for MH370's disappearance. I have to say your answers to these surveys are getting more and more interesting, so stick around for that. Also, something I've been hearing from a lot of commenters is, hey, a lot of your episodes are pretty atomic level. I'm new to this mystery. Can you provide a concise summary of the case and what you think happened? I'm planning to do a couple of episodes in the near future that will give a concise account of what happened. But for now, let me turn you on to a book that I wrote about it. It's called The Taking of MH370. It's a quick read. It's designed to be as concise as possible, and it will swiftly and readably bring you up to speed on the key things that you need to know. I'll put a show in the link notes if you want to pick that up. Okay, onward with Russ Matthews. He is a man who has been looking for lost ships and airplanes in the ocean for a long time. He's a certified diver. He's a licensed private pilot. He has a long-time fascination with World War II history. He was part of a team that carried out the first exploration of the sunken World War II aircraft carrier USS Independence. He also led an expedition to find a lost Pan Am Clipper in Samoa. In 2016, he co-founded the Air Sea Heritage Foundation, which is a nonprofit that is, quote, dedicated to the study, investigation, and preservation of relics, wrecks, sites, and stories related to aviation and maritime history. Next episode, I'll talk with one of his partners in the Puerto Rico discovery, Tony Romeo, who will tell us about how he hopes to apply the lessons that they've learned on this expedition to finding MH370. So keep an eye out for that one. Okay, here's Russ. Russ, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. You are a hot ticket. You've just found a plane on the seabed, which is something that people love to hear about. So first of all, thank you for taking the time and welcome.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So you are the president and co-founder of an organization called the Air Sea Heritage Foundation. You look for missing ships and planes in the ocean. Is that right?
That's exactly it. Yeah, we search for, document historic ship and aircraft wrecks around the world.
And how did you get involved in the missing DC-4 that you just reported the discovery of last week?
Yeah, well, I've been an aviation historian my whole life. I just love it, and so founded AirC about 10 years ago, 2016, and in the process of researching other things, I like always come across interesting stories, and this one came in kind of an unusual way. There was a post on the Pan Am Historical Foundation website about a group that searches for they clean up beaches of like especially balloon debris, and one of their beachcombers found a piece of a luggage tag from an old Pan Am luggage tag, and started wondering, where did this come from? And this guy Tom Pitchford put it together and realized that there had been this accident in Puerto Rico, and dug into it further, and he found looked into could the currents have conceivably carried this all the way from Puerto Rico to Florida? And it was an interesting hypothesis, and he put it out there and talked to the webmaster and historian at PAHF, Doug Miller, and they put together a really cool blog post. And I read it, and the thing that was shocking to me is that I love this stuff. I've been studying it my whole life, and I had never heard of Clipper Endeavor, until 7 years ago. And I mean, now it's known around the world. And that just kind of set me off to wonder, what about this plane that I've never heard of? And did the research and discovered all like these stories are so compelling, and the impact was so far reaching, with the fact that, the result of this accident was the change in the regulations to make it mandatory to give pre-flight safety briefings to passengers before every flight.
Right. So this was a plane that had taken off in 1952. It was a 4-engine plane that was heading for New York City. And a few minutes after takeoff, they lost an engine. The captain wound up setting it down on the ocean surface, ditching it, Sully style, Miracle in the Hudson. And like Sully, he was able to get it down in one piece, but then things went wrong.
Exactly. Yeah, they were bound Puerto Rico, San Juan, Puerto Rico to New York. An 8-hour flight, 69 people on board, with all their luggage and all the fuel to make it, all the way to New York. Lost one of the engines almost immediately after takeoff. And the pilot elected to return. And was on the downwind leg when a second engine started to pack it in, and the plane is losing altitude. It never was more than like 500 feet in the air. And realized that the only thing that he could do, he went to maximum power on the other two engines, and then tried to lose weight. Like the only thing he could do quickly was try and lose weight. So they started dumping fuel. And it was essentially at that point just a race against time, and time ran out. The plane ended up in the water, and just as you said, he managed to put it down in 8 to 10 foot seas, put it down largely intact. The tail separated, when they hit the water, but it happened. It severed just aft of the passenger cabin, so the passenger cabin and the cockpit were fully intact, and everyone was alive at that point.
But the plane started to flood almost immediately, and within 3 minutes, it had sunk. And because they didn't have pre-flight briefings in those days, there was language difficulties. People didn't seem to want to get into the shark-infested waters. Things did not unfold ideally.
Right. There was a lot of confusion, a lot of fear, and people didn't know, where are the life jackets, where are the life rafts, where are the exits, what do you do in the event of an emergency? I've seen some comments. People are saying, like, one guy on the internet is like, well, anybody knows how to put on a life jacket, and that maybe that's true, but you have to know where it is. And what's amazing is that there's some of the survivor testimony talks about they asked, called to the steward, where's the life jacket? And he called back, en el bolsillo, which means in the pocket. And I found a picture of the typical, Pan Am seating at that time. And there is a magazine pocket like we would see today. And you would think, I would look in there, or I'd look under my seat. It's not where it was. There was actually a flap in the headrest of the seat ahead of you that you lifted up some snaps, and there it is. So it's inches away. It's amazing. Like it's right where you need it, but nobody was told that that's where it was. So, I wouldn't have thought to look there, and in 3 minutes, with the plane flooding and tilting and, 10-foot seat, like I don't think I would have found it. I don't know if you would have.
So the story that I've been reading is that this crash was what inspired airlines or the FAA to mandate that airlines have pre-flight briefings so that this kind of thing wouldn't happen, which is amazing that this flight that everyone had forgotten had this really fundamental lasting impact.
Absolutely. I mean, you find it in the original set survivor testimony where they're talking about actually making the suggestion at the time. A couple of survivors are saying, it would be good in the future if you told people, what to do. And so in the final Civil Aeronautics Board report, they actually lay it out that before every flight, passengers should be briefed on all of these safety features. And they also made changes too, like on this aircraft, all of the life rafts were stored together. So the second officer manages to free one of them and actually has to climb over the seats in the rear cabin because the aisle is blocked, and he gets the life raft out the exit and then has to duck underwater to swim out after it. And then the other two rafts, the first officer and a female passenger, were trying to free them, but the frame had twisted and they couldn't get them out. And they barely escaped out the cockpit windows with just a few inches of space between them and the waves outside. So, they now they're distributed throughout the cabin. And I mean, there's other like redundant features. And, so there's a lot that came out of this. And as Josh Gates likes to say, we are all safer every time we step on an airplane because of the lessons that were learned from Clipper Endeavor.
Indeed. And so having learned about this crash, how did you come to be on this ship? This was back in like April, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those overnight successes that took like 7 years, to get there. I started researching it in 2019, and when actually NOAA, I've consulted on a few other projects with NOAA, and they put out occasionally, request for input for the upcoming scientific season, and they were going to be operating in the Caribbean. And that was what really kind of, connected the dots, where I had read about this, story of the luggage tag and this plane that had gone down in Puerto Rico, and then, get this ping that, a research vessel is going to be there. And so started to do the research to figure out like, well, exactly where did this go down? And can we, is there a chance of finding this? Actually started out studying existing multi-beam data for that area, and Okeanos Explorer had been through that region twice and just scanning from the surface. So there was, kind of general, bathymetry data and, that's again, taken from like 2,000 feet. But there'd been some success in the past. So a friend of mine, Gary Fabian, had consulted also with NOAA and had studied the same kind of data off of Saipan and picked out a target in about 370 meters of water that turned out to be a Boeing B-29 Superfortress, which is virtually the same size as a DC-4. So it was like, Gary, can you take a look at this? Is there anything there? And of course, the water depth was deeper. It was, more on the order of 500 meters to 600. And so he looks at it, picks out a few interesting anomalies, and we propose it to NOAA to investigate this. And they put it on the schedule. They were going to be at San Juan in April of the following year. And they put it on the schedule for the kind of the test phase because the target was right off of San Juan. And I went to Miami to do additional research at the Pan Am Archive at the University of Miami Library. And that's in March. I'm there on March 19th, and the librarian was like, we're going to have to close the library a little early. There's this disease that's going around, and it looks kind of bad. And so Yeah, so I finished up quickly and went home, and we all know the rest of the story. The COVID pandemic, ship never left the dock. So it was all put on hold basically for like 2 years until there was an opportunity in August 2022. We checked out 2 of those targets with an ROV, and they were geology. And then Schmidt Ocean Institute was in the area the following spring, and they checked out the other 2, geology again. But we're ticking it off and realize, okay, we need better data. We need to get like a dedicated sonar mission off of San Juan. And I started talking to a buddy of mine, Evan Kovacs at Marine Imaging Technologies, and we came up with a plan, bare bones. We're going to do a towed sonar survey, which is really kind of pushing it for that depth. But we thought, we've got a pretty tight search area. We'll give this a shot. And which we did in April of 2024. But we just got our teeth kicked in by the weather. Yeah. So it was the surface conditions were rough, and we were blown off the water probably half the time. We had 5-day mission planned, and we got blown off the water for 3 days. And you're trying to tow basically a mile-long armored cable behind the ship, and with every motion from the waves, being transmitted down that cable to the probe, deep down under the surface, and it ends up kind of distorting the data. And you're pushed off your line a lot of the time, and it eluded us again. By the end of that mission, even before we reached the dock, I'm like, we need something else. We need better technology. And I was already texting with Tony Romeo at Deep Sea Vision, now Eco Minerals, but and saying we'd worked with them in the past on another project in the Pacific, and I asked Miss Millie, which is their AUV. It's like, could Miss Millie use a Caribbean trip? Because we've got something that's right up her alley, and it took another couple of years, but we finally got her there.
So they were working on a project further south in the Caribbean.
Yes.
And they were heading back north, and they basically said, well, we'll agree to basically out of their own pocket fund a couple-day search.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's part of it, yes. Tony and Craig at Deep Sea are really good friends and colleagues. We were all together in April this year at the Explorers Club at the annual dinner. And it's April, and I'm looking ahead and saying, a year from now is the 75th anniversary of the Clipper Endeavor loss, and we need to do something to wrap this up before then. And Craig went away and had to think about it, and a few weeks later he calls, and just as you say, he realizes their asset was in Trinidad, having just completed another contract, and the company they're working with, Fugro, was negotiating for 2 other contracts in the Gulf. And Craig realized, well, it's going to be passing, on that transit, it's going to pass right by Puerto Rico. And they had decided to leave the system and the team on board. So everything is rigged and ready to go. And so he had a word with the leadership at Fugro, and they agreed that they would divert, the ship, and give us an opportunity where we could charter the vessel for a few days to do this survey. And
so, did you fly down to San Juan and meet them there and hop on board?
Yes. So we flew down and went out to the ship, and we jumped on board. And Craig was already ready with a search plan. We'd been doing analysis. We had an incredible amount of wealth of information that had come from the archives, and essentially kind of 5 major lines of evidence that all kind of, pointed to this one area, and had a good friend, Antoine Normandin, had done a really detailed analysis where he'd synthesized all of this data, run it through thousands of computer simulations, added in weather data, and computed a heat map with a 10 square mile box with a probability that he estimated it at like, something like 87% chance that the wreck is contained like within this spot. And then, Craig laid a search grid over that actually overlapped all of it, with a 30-hour subsea mission to collect data, just running the lines back and forth over the seabed. And there was, it was right in there. It was there. It was there. Yeah. There's one point where it's rated the highest probability. The main fuselage turned up about 400 meters away, which we figured is 8 seconds of flying time.
The process of taking the information that you have, putting it through using a Bayesian approach to generate a heat map from that, and parenthetically, all of the areas that you'd searched already and didn't find it, that gets calculated into the heat map because pretty much not to look there. And then you have this heat map that tells you, okay, we're going to search the high probability areas first, and then the lower probability. There's an element of luck, frankly. In a sense, yes, you looked for it where it was most likely to be, but things don't always play out the most likely way that they are. You do sometimes roll snake eyes. Yeah, you didn't. You guys got lucky 7. I don't play dice, actually. I don't know exactly how it works. But the point being, you nailed it. And so, am I right in understanding that the AUV went down?
We nailed it. We nailed it on the 4th try. So
the 4th try. Oh, Tony said it was
the 4th try. We've done 2 ROV searches and a towed sonar search. So with the AUV, first try, but it was a while in getting to that point.
So the kind of the parallels to MH370, by the way, are a little uncanny because you started with the towed side scan sonar, then you brought in the AUV, also using Fugro because Fugro was the first company that did the seabed search. So the problem is, and the use of heat maps. So it's all very kind of scintillatingly similar. You're on board this ship. You deploy the AUV. Am I right to understand that it's like a 24-hour mission? It's down there doing its scan and collecting its data, but you don't see the data till it comes up, and you get to plug it in and download the data.
That's absolutely right. This one was actually designed as a 30-hour mission. Subsea, the vehicle has the capability to remain down for 4 days at a time. But this one, we programmed it for the 30 hours to cover our primary search box. And just as you say, the vehicle is launched. It's essentially on its own. It's sending kind of telemetry data, its depth, like the basic, its heading and its speed and so forth. You're tracking it, but it is not feeding you data from the scan in real time. In that case, you have to wait until it's returned to the surface and you retrieve the hard drive from the vehicle and then plug it in and download it and process it. So it's still a long process, to get it until you're scanning through it and get a chance to review what it's seen and what's down there.
So tell me what it's like to be on a ship while your AUV is under you, doing the work that you've now spent years and years planning for, and you don't know, you might have done all of this work for nothing.
Right. Yeah. I think we were, again, because we're going to search the primary search box, and we've been kind of in this spot before, covering some ground and then trying to figure out where next. You're sort of planning the next move ahead, and we're already kind of reviewing the data and a little bit second guessing our priority of where do we send her next? Because we have another search box that we feel is now would cover maybe a 97% chance that the plane is contained within there somewhere. But do we start to the south? Do we start closer to shore? Do we go, further off, where in areas where we didn't search previously? So you're kind of always trying to refine the methodology and the search as you're going and as you're learning more things. And sometimes it's a little bit nail biting because you're watching the vehicle and the data coming from the vehicle, and it's telling you what the subsea looks like and what the terrain is like. And so it's programmed to maintain, at this case, I think it was 25 meters above the seabed, and to try and maintain that, fairly steadily. But the terrain changes, and it has forward-looking sonar, so it can anticipate obstacles, and it can navigate itself up and down. And towards the west in this search line, the terrain started to get a lot rougher. And eventually, so you start getting a little nail biting, like, oh, what's it doing now? It's pitching up. What does it see? What's going to happen? And oh, wait, it looks like it cleared it. It's on the way down again. But is it diving down into a canyon? And eventually that is what happened. So the vehicle actually returned to the surface a little bit early. We had something like 33 lines programmed, and it aborted on line 29. It sensed trouble and that it didn't feel like it could navigate out of, and it aborted the mission and came to the surface. Well, just that the terrain was getting a lot more challenging, a lot rougher, and where it couldn't pitch up quickly enough to clear the terrain ahead. And so it's a $10 to $12 million asset, so it will get itself out of there. Yeah, exactly.
Don't get Tony mad. What?
Right.
So walk me through, what time of day is it when the AUV comes up? When do when you start processing the data? Are you looking at the data? Tell me what it's like.
Yeah, it came up kind of, I think, sort of mid-afternoon, and we started looking through the data, and it has multiple sensors on it. Kind of the primary, at this point, the primary search mode is side scan sonar. And I'm sure you're familiar with the kind of readouts that gives you, but the signal is going out to the side of the vehicle, and then right down the center is this black space, or the nadir, and where it's kind of a blank space on the chart. And so, but the vehicle can kind of fill that in with a lower resolution multi-beam echo sounder. So the multi-beam actually processes faster because it's lower resolution. So we actually reviewed that data first, and it's, but it's only looking straight down below the vehicle. And so we looked through that entire run, all the way through, and nothing, except we did run over, right over a shipwreck that nobody knew was there. Yeah. Yeah. Like a 40-meter long steel hulled shipwreck that's not on the chart. We're still working to identify it. So that was like, well, that's interesting, but we are looking for a plane. So let's keep going. And at that point, I gotta say, you're feeling a little bit low because, the vehicle has aborted on its initial run. You've looked through the initial run of data and not seen anything. And so, but, Craig points out that well, let's look through the side scan. It's had time to process. And in that data on either side, it's cutting a swath that's, you could park 3 or 4 DC-4s wingtip to wingtip in that space and not see anything. So, yes. So we start scanning through that data and, get to line 13. And I think we start that one and everybody sort of says, well, lucky 13, here we go. And then in the waterfall display, the first thing that comes down on sort of left side of the screen is, the returns at this point, the seabed is very soft and sandy. And so on the return, it looks like your living room carpet just scrolling by. And before the mission, I was saying, like, if it landed in a place like this, it's going to stand out like a toy plane on the living room carpet. And so we're watching it, and it looks just like that now. And the first thing that comes down is almost like little sparkles where you're getting hard returns. So it's making like these bright spots, not very big, but kind of bright spots. And then 2 slightly larger ones, and then a bigger chunk. And Craig stops the playback, and we're all looking at it. It's like, well, that's interesting. And it's like, well, that could be the tail. And we know that the tail of the airplane severed in the ditching. And Craig measures it, and I think he says, well, it's about 12 meters across, which feels about right. It looks like it has structure. And Craig says, well, if that's the tail, where's the rest of the aircraft? And hits play on the playback, and then scrolling down the screen on the left side is the fuselage. And yeah. And just bedlam. Everybody in the control room just, oh my God. Yeah, there it is. So
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Are you sitting down next to him, like looking at the same screen together?
Yeah. So I'm sitting next to Craig, and then Heidi and Josh are with me as on my other side. And yeah, it's it was really.
This is going to be in a Discovery Channel TV show.
It is. Yes. Yeah. So you'll be able to see kind of the full story and see the moment.
That's great.
For yourself. I think it'll premiere sometime later in the fall.
That's amazing. That's so wonderful. You've looked for a bunch of different things in the ocean, and you've found things. Was this unique, or was this similar to how you found other things? The experience of it, I mean.
The experience is, it's hard to beat, because, being right there on the scene and in, virtually in real time, and being right over the site as it happens. There's nothing that can compare to that. And a site that no one had seen in 74 years. I participated in others. We did something very similar about 2 years ago in partnership with Ocean Infinity, where they were doing testing of a system off of San Francisco. And I'd gotten to know their head of maritime operations, Andy Sherrill, again at the Explorers Club the previous April, and this is 2024. And, he called me up and was, mentioned that they were doing this test program, and asked if there were any targets in the area. That's, why not try and, find something, while they have the assets in the area. So I'd worked for a while with Dr. James Delgado, researching a ship called the Stuart, which is an American destroyer from World War II, that had the unfortunate and unique distinction of being the only major U.S. warship that served on both sides in World War II. Had been taken and put into service by the Japanese, and then eventually found and recommissioned into the U.S. Navy and scuttled off of San Francisco in 1946. But yeah, so Andy was able to deploy actually 3 Hugin 6000 AUVs, and just kind of swarmed the area and found it within 24 hours. And in fact, the first vehicle they launched actually ran over it within like a few lines. I mean, it was pretty remarkable. So yeah,
well, they've had some remarkable success, not least with the Airliner San Juan.
Yeah,
but it, of course, one of the great, probably the greatest question right now when it comes to looking for things on the seabed is what the heck happened to MH370. Is that a topic that you think might attach yourself to?
Well, for us, we're a historical, foundation, so it's a little bit newer vintage, for us. If it's something that actually happened in all of our living memory. So I'm obviously, as fascinated as the rest of the world in what happened, and it is a tragic and significant event, and finding it would be so meaningful. It's not something that we've taken on as an organization, though certainly have followed along with it. We had a wealth of data that is just not available, in the search for MH370. So the two are not similar in that way at all. I think the things to draw from it, though, are exactly what you're talking about, is that the technology does exist to find things in the deep ocean, and they do persist, and people do still care, and they will continue to pursue it until they find the answers. So I feel like for the people who lost loved ones on MH370 or on other aviation accidents in the ocean throughout history, there is still hope, and that they will still be found.
And am I correct in understanding that in your case with the Clipper, you were able to talk to some of the survivors or relatives of the deceased?
Yes, I mean, that's been easily the most rewarding and impactful result of this for all of us on the team, has been just the outpouring of emotion and gratitude and relief from the impacted families. And I cannot tell you like how much it's meant to us to hear from them and hear their stories and share them as well. I mean, I did manage, before we made our first attempt, I had tracked down one of the survivors who had been a 2-year-old at the time and was miraculously saved. And then in the lead up to making this announcement, we were working with our partners at Discovery Channel, and wanting to connect with families, especially in advance of the announcement. And one of the producers went back through their social media and found a post from a man named David Vasquez, who had just watched the previous episode about our search in 2024, just a few weeks earlier, by total coincidence. And he wrote to say, my mom was on that plane and she's still alive at 102 if you want to speak to her. Yes. Yeah. So we got on a call. He took his iPhone or whatever, he took his phone over there, and we did a video conference with Victorina, and she is absolute firecracker and still has that same drive for life that, got her out of that sinking plane and got her to 102 years old. And it was amazing to talk to someone who, had these events she lived them. They're in her memory. It's not a file in an archive. It's something that actually, happened to her and that she shared with us.
I love that. There's so much technology and equipment and science that we talk about when we try to grapple with these mysteries, but to know that at the end of it, there's a human dimension, that you are affecting people's lives and giving them closure, or just helping them understand a phase of their own life. That's a really wonderful thing. I
mean, these stories persist in families for generations. And, some of the people we hear from, never knew their loved one, the family members who were on that flight, but maybe they talked to, someone whose brother or someone whose mother, or their aunt, or, what had been part of it, and who told those stories and shared them. I mean, there's one family, the Brignonis, who lost 8.
Oh my God.
8 members of their family on that flight. And we've heard from several of them, their descendants and their relatives, and they are extraordinary. And the bonds of that family are so strong. And what's really heartening is to see the names that were on that passenger manifest, like still echo through the generations. They've been naming others in the family that carry on those same names and carry on those memories. We
at the top, we started talking about how this was a lost or a forgotten aircraft accident. And of course, we've talked about the legacy that it left in aviation safety in general around the world, but also for those families that lost 8 family members, or however many they lost. This was not a forgotten tragedy. This is one that has affected probably every aspect of their lives for generations now.
Absolutely. And I mean, I can't, just the stories are incredible. And these are people who were leading, complex lives and had, hopes and dreams and tribulations. And, it was all interrupted, all taken away in an instant. But now, I mean, it's, finding the wreck has shed new light on it, allowed us to kind of write this final chapter and bring it to the attention of a whole new generation. I've been astounded by the reach that this story has had, especially through the web. And inside of a week, Clipper Endeavor is now a term that's known around the globe. When until just a week ago, it was a very select few that realized what it meant.
And my mind keeps going back to a guy walking along a beach, seeing something, picking it up. It's a luggage tag.
Yeah.
And everything unfolded from that. You talk about the butterfly effect, What if that tag had washed ashore an hour earlier or later or whatever? The guy hadn't been so observant. It's so easy to imagine things turning out differently.
Yeah, and it's amazing the connections that are made along the way. So he reaches out to the Pan Am Historical Foundation, who helps him, with additional research, and they put it out online, to make it available to people. I read it. I start, reaching out to my colleagues and contacts, and they start contributing their analysis, their research, their assets, and it just builds and builds and builds, until you have this incredible result. And we actually have just heard, from the people who found that luggage tag, because that story has gotten out there again, and it's kind of come full circle.
It just seems so easy to feel like, well, what can I do?
Right.
What does it matter? Why? Why do I even bother? When you hear a story like that about one pebble starts an avalanche.
Exactly. I mean, it's that just I mean, you can explore, even like this was almost literally in their backyard, and exploring the world and trying to understand it and formulating a theory. I saw the early correspondence that they had between this beachcombing group and Pan Am Historical Foundation, and one of them says, it's Tom Pitchford says, in my fevered imagination, this came from Pan Am's Clipper Endeavor. He'd made the connection in his mind. Could it be?
Crazy.
But he did
crazy.
Yes.
No responsible person would make such a crazy conjecture, and yet.
Right. But he did really solid historical research about it too, to understand the history of this and like what did luggage tags look like at that time, and when was this logo in use with the company, and what are the currents like? Could something have drifted all the way to Florida from Puerto Rico? And it held together, and that. Do
you think that this was sort of entombed in the aircraft and then sort of broke free all these years later and floated? Like it was almost like a message sent from the aircraft.
Oh, man, yeah. I'm almost speechless talking about that now, because generally I'm a pretty analytical guy, and I want primary source documentation and rigorous like scientific testing. But boy, the other night, started thinking about that, and this piece was, the possession of one of the passengers. It was the label that branded this thing as theirs, and it somehow made its way into the hands of people who would pass it on. And yeah, it gave me chills the other night thinking about that this is almost like them calling out to be found, and it took a lot of people working together to do it, but answered the call, and here we are, 7 years later. So
goosebumps.
Actually, 12 years later, because that's when they found that tag was 2014. So
oh my gosh,
yep.
Goosebumps. Russ, I have to end it there because I can't imagine getting any better than that.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. I love to hear your story. I'm so excited to hear.
Right.
Well, first of all, I'm going to definitely check out the show when it comes out. But I want to hear about your next adventures, because it sounds like you've got some more cool projects up your sleeve.
Oh yeah, no, we're not done. We're still scheming. We've got a map of the world and putting pins in it, and just keeping an eye on what's next. So we'll keep you in the loop.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
I really had a great time talking with Russ. If you want to learn more about the Air-Sea Heritage Foundation, I'll put a link to their website in the show notes. And as I promised up top, I want to give a special shout out to the podcast's new sponsors. This includes new Substack paid member Mike Ward, and also Barbel. Thanks also to new YouTube paid subscriber Facing Dexter, and merci beaucoup to podcast watcher Classical Contrarian, who sent me $14 Canadian via Super Thanks. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. And remember, if you'd like to get updates about new episodes, you can sign up for a free newsletter at the show page, findingmh370.com. You don't want to miss those upcoming episodes. All right, on to last episode's survey question. What do official investigators believe happened to MH370? It's kind of a trick question, as we'll see. Most of you got it right. Let's check out the first answer. This one says, there is no official explanation. The final reports offer none. And yes, that's true. Neither the Australian nor the Malaysian final reports offered any official explanation. The Australian said, quote, the reasons for the loss of MH370 cannot be established with certainty until the aircraft is found. The Malaysians were a little bit more verbose. They said, quote, there is a significant lack of evidence available to the team to determine with any certainty the reasons that the aircraft diverted from its filed flight plan route. However, the change in flight path likely resulted from manual inputs. They went on to say, quote, the investigation was unable to identify any plausible aircraft or systems failure mode that would lead to the observed systems deactivation, diversion from the filed flight plan route, and the subsequent flight path taken by the aircraft. However, the same lack of evidence precluded the investigation from definitively eliminating that possibility. The possibility of intervention by a third party cannot be excluded either. End quote. So, yes, this first response is true, but it is not the correct answer to the question, which was, what do official investigators believe? Not what they say, but what they believe. Because what they said in the report is different from what they say kind of behind the scenes based on subsequent reporting. Okay, let's move on. Second answer, someone hijacked the plane, either a pilot or a third party. Only 7% chose this answer, but it's actually correct. They do think this. But they don't think it was a third party. They only think the first part. They think that the captain, Zaharie Ahmad Shah, did it. Which brings us to the answer number 3, which is, quote, the captain, Zaharie Shah, carried out a mass murder-suicide. Yes, this is what investigators think. Though they haven't said that as much in writing, that's what they've been searching. That's why they've been searching the area of the seabed where they've been looking. 56% of you said that. That's the right answer. And I would also mark that and the last one both as correct. Okay, finally, number 4. For unknown reasons, the plane took a ghost flight far out to sea. That actually was once something that investigators thought might have happened. In fact, I think at the very early days, that's what they thought was most likely. But that has not been true for a long time. Even though some very successful YouTube videos have stated this as a fact, it is not right. It has not been true for many years. If MH370 had been a ghost flight into the ocean, the range of possible endpoints would have been small, and it would have been found a long time ago. So I'm sorry to the 6% who chose that, but I'm going to have to mark that wrong. Be sure to keep an eye out for the next survey question. I love hearing your guys' perspective on things like this. Okay, that's all I have for you today. Thanks once again for watching. Do share your thoughts, questions, suggestions, concerns, whatever you got. Share them on the comments at YouTube or share them at the show page, findingmh370.com. And definitely check out the next episode. We are going to learn all about how the discovery of the Clipper Endeavour on the seabed could inspire a new and improved search for MH370. Until then, I'll see you next time.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.